Now, the three breath works, I'm going to start with the most sort of calm breath work to begin with. And the second breath work will be a little bit more intense, maybe a bit tricky for some people. And then the third breath work is going to be quite a strong practice. And so there are going to be some contraindications to these breath works. I mean, with all practices, when it comes to breath work and movement or anything where you're changing your physiology, there's always going to be certain instances where these things shouldn't be done. And so as a result, I have got a little list here just next to me to read off of, just to be clear on, who shouldn't be doing these practices. So the first breath work that we're going to be doing is known as Bhramari Pranayama, which basically, I don't know if it translates to it, but it is known as the Bumblebee Breath. Okay, and so for the Bumblebee Breath, I'll talk you through the Bumblebee Breath, because again, this is the breath work where there's not really any risks necessarily to doing this practice, but there are a few that should just be considered, where it's recommended that this isn't done for people that currently have an ear infection or severe sinusitis. So yeah, if you've got anything going on with your ears, your sinuses, this is a breath work to just exercise caution with. Doesn't say you shouldn't do it, but definitely be cautious with it. And potentially if you suffer with severe migraines, I think it's more just if you are currently suffering with a migraine, this is maybe a breath work to not do. But again, in terms of the breath works we're doing today, this is the safest one. But it basically, the practice, it will lower your heart rate and your blood pressure. So anything sort of connected to that is a reason to avoid doing this breath work. But for the Bumblebee Breath, we're going to do 2 rounds of it, as a sort of 2 ways of doing it. And the focus with this breath work is really using your core muscles, your abdominals, to control the exhale and to really control your diaphragm. So the idea is that you want to extend the exhale for as long as you can, and that will make the sound of the bumblebee for as long as possible, right? So with the breath work, you take a deep breath in, and then this is where the control comes in. As you exhale, so you vibrate your throat and you make the sound of a bumblebee. So the idea is that you really, with your eyes closed, you're focusing and really, really tuning into your abdominals, your sort of, your core muscles and your breathing muscles in your belly. And you're controlling the exhale to make it as long as possible so that you can make the bumblebee sound for as long as possible, okay? We'll do 1 round together, and then we'll do a second round that is a little bit more intense, basically. So come to sitting comfortably. Doesn't need to be a fancy sitting posture or anything, just so you can extend through the spine. You want to make space for your lungs, so just rolling your shoulder blades backwards. And just close your eyes for a moment and tune into your breath. So just tuning into your natural breath, focusing. And then start deepening your breath. Breathing deeper in, longer out. And so, with your next breath in, breathe in as deep as you can and fill your lungs. And then with the exhale, opening your eyes. So, that's one round. Pretty simple, not too complicated. Let me know how that was for you, if that made sense, if anything needs to be clarified, or if you just have any feedback. For myself, just the one round, I can already feel settled. There's a calmness in me just from the sort of, the extended period of focusing, and also the vibrations that you create in your body are very calming, very relaxing. Again, just looking at the list here, when you do this breath work, it really works with your, what does it say? It really works with your reducing the heart rate and blood pressure, as I mentioned. It improves nasal airflow and oxygen uptake from the nasal humming. Reduces stress and anxiety. This has been proven in studies, and can also improve sleep onset. So, not a bad breath work to use before going to bed, actually. One to if you're settling down to go to sleep at the end of the night, and maybe your mind is a bit busy, a bit preoccupied, and you're tossing and turning, not able to fall asleep. This is a breath work that can set you up for nodding off, basically. So that's one way to do the breath work, Bhramari Pranayama. The other way to do it, now, the way of doing this, it can make some people feel a little bit claustrophobic because of the intensity of it. And if it makes you feel a bit claustrophobic, you just take your hands away and you stop doing the practice, and you just take some deep breaths and center yourself. But you do the same breath work, only this time it's really hard to use the camera. So with your thumb, see that the flap of your ear, so the little part of your ear here, and with your thumb you can press that, and that sort of closes your ear hole. So with your thumbs you press on the little part of your ear here to close the whole of your ear, and then you can rest your fingers on your eyes, and your eyes are closed. And so that's going to really capture the sound, capture the vibration inside of your head, inside of your skull. And so then you're going to just be a lot more engrossed in the experience, a lot more tuned in, and it's going to be a lot more intense. So again, if it's too intense, if it's a little bit too much, take the hands away, a couple of deep breaths, and just allow yourself to settle back into feeling a bit more normal. But otherwise, again, sitting long, have the chest nice and open. Place your thumbs on your ear flaps. Rest your fingers on your eyes. So we're going to take a deep breath in together, and then when I say exhale, close your ears and do the Bumblebee Breath in the throat. So again, deep breath in, and Bumblebee. And so obviously once you're finished, taking your hands away, settling back into your regular breathing. And so that is the Bhramari Pranayama, the Bumblebee Breath. And it's just really, really beneficial to, if you're someone that you haven't done much breathing practice in your life, it's a really good way to connect to using the muscles that control your breath. A common thing I find when I'm teaching yoga, the breath in a yoga practice is the most important thing, right? The breath is what makes the difference between an exercise being an exercise and a yoga practice being a yoga practice, right? When you exercise, you're using energy up. you're burning off energy. So you're running or you're lifting weights or whatever, you're using energy, okay? With a yoga practice, you're not looking to use up energy, you're looking to bring energy in. And so the way to do this is to breathe properly. And so what I often find when somebody has, never done yoga before, or have never really been sporty or done much exercise, when they come to yoga and they hear me really going on about the breath, I'm saying breathe through your nose, breathe through your nose, breathe in and out through your nose. Some people turn up to yoga and they realize they breathe through their mouth. And then obviously as they pay more attention to it, they become more and more aware that they aren't breathing through their nose at all. And that actually they are breathing through their mouth. And so, if you are one of these people that breathes through your mouth, that is not the proper way to breathe. You can breathe through your mouth, but that is a backup, secondary, emergency option for the body. Obviously, if you can't breathe through the nose, you still got to breathe, so we have the benefit of being able to breathe through the mouth. But to really utilize the body effectively, to get as much oxygen to the brain and as much oxygen around the body and really use our full lung capacity, we should always be breathing through our nose. And so we can use Bhramari Pranayama, the Bumblebee Breath, to increase our ability at breathing properly, really using our breathing muscles to make sure we're breathing in deeper and exhaling completely. We're bringing as much energy into the body as possible, and with the exhale, releasing as much used energy as we can. Otherwise, it gets trapped, it stagnates, it gathers in the body, and this is what makes us feel exhausted, because we're not getting the energy in that we need to. So that's Bhramari Pranayama, the Bumblebee Breath, okay? The next practice is known as the Bellows Breath. And so this is taking that use of your core muscles and your abdominals a step further. And again, if you've never used your muscles in this way, it's going to be tricky to maintain the practice for the whole duration that I'm going to be doing it for. But let me talk you through it first of all, okay? So for the Kapalabhati Pranayama, what we do is we take a deep breath in, deep breath out. We then breathe in half a breath, and then using our abdominals, using our core muscles, so we pull the belly button in towards the spine, and that forces the half breath out through our nose. And when we release the belly, when we relax the muscles, it pulls the half breath back into the lungs. And so we're not breathing normally by any means. We're breathing using the power of our stomachs to press and release on our diaphragms. Okay, so round after round, it's so I'm pulling my belly button in towards the spine, pushing the breath out of my lungs, I'm releasing my stomach, bringing the half breath back in, and round after round, it's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, okay? So obviously, if you've not done this practice before, it might be a little bit challenging to use your muscles in this way. And if that is the case, then what you'll have to do is you'll have to breathe in through your nose, and then just get used to squeezing the belly button in towards the spine to squeeze the breath out of the lungs. And obviously, as you start to practice this more and more, you're going to strengthen those muscles and the ability to quickly force the breath out of the nose, okay? So if that's not quite clear to anybody, please leave a comment and I will help you understand better. Again, if you're tuning in at a later point, please leave a comment. I will come back and again try to answer your questions. But so this is a breath work that is now, doing a bit more physiologically in the body. And so again, let me just read from the list as to who should not do this breath work, okay? So this practice should be avoided for cardiovascular reasons such as hypertension, heart disease, heart attacks, and stroke history. respiratory conditions such as severe asthma and COPD exacerbations, abdominal pelvic things such as hernias, abdominal surgery, pregnancy, and gastric ulcers, people with epilepsy, people with glaucoma, retinal detachment, recent eye surgery, or anybody that suffers from vertigo, as essentially the forceful exhalation increases intra-abdominal pressure and transiently elevates blood pressure and intracranial pressure. So because we are forcing energy essentially through the body, the power of the movement, this is why it's called the bellows breath. It's the idea is where you sort of, I mean, a bellows is a bit of an old idea now, but a bellows is one of those things that you used to squeeze and it would blow air onto the fire, right? So Rob, you're asking if you should practice this with a full stomach. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, if you've just eaten, you don't really want to be... What you're doing essentially with your stomach is similar to what a cat does when it's trying to make itself vomit. Not too dissimilar. So yeah, if you've got a full stomach, yeah, maybe avoid doing this practice as well. But yeah, so like a bellows, you're squeezing the breath to stoke the fire, right? And so this breath work is really fanning the flames, because in this abdominal area you have your internal fire, your digestive fire, and so we're really generating heat and power in the body with this breath work, right? So the reason, again, just reading from my list here, it can increase respiratory efficiency. So because your exhalation muscles are stronger, your breath practice is you're more connected to it. Your ability to exhale your breath efficiently improves, and therefore you have increased respiratory efficiency. Potentially improved CO2 tolerance. So when we hold our breath, CO2 builds up in the body, and if you're not used to using up oxygen quickly in the body, when we use up oxygen, converts into CO2 in our body, this can be a very uncomfortable experience for people who are not used to it. So if you're trying to keep the body healthy, trying to keep it efficient in dealing with clearing out CO2 from the body, this is a good practice. Bit of a metabolic activation, so improve your metabolism, and enhanced alertness and reaction time for a short term, at least for a short term period. So that's not necessarily a permanent physiological change in the body, but definitely. So I do this breath work when I'm really trying to lock in with something, when I'm really, I want all the energy in my body, I want to be fired up, I want to be with it, I want to be locked in and engaged. This is when I do this breath work. When I'm about to do a strong yoga practice, so I'm really going to be doing some challenging movements and practices with my body, this is when I would use this breath work as well. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to everybody. And again, if not, leave a comment. I will come back and answer your questions. So what we're going to do is we'll do it together, and in terms of the breath, we're going to do 108 rounds. That sounds like a lot, but actually it's very quick, and I'll be counting, so all you need to do is focus on doing the breath work. Okay, so you're going to be pumping the stomach, using your muscles to force the breath in and out through the nose. And if you start to lose that intensity of the practice, you'll be breathing in, and just get used to squeezing your breath out of your body by using your abdominals and your core muscles. Okay, so sitting comfortably, long through the spine, chest open. Take a deep breath in. Exhale. Breathe in half a breath. Pump the belly. And then deep breath in. Exhale. And hold your breath, hold the exhale, and just focus internally for a moment, observing what this breath has done for you. And then when you must, settling back into your natural breath. And so that is Kapalabhati Pranayama. For me, instantly, I do this breath work and I feel that I can speak clearer. You know, there's an energy, there's a clarity, there's a feeling just sort of in my throat, and as I speak I can feel this difference in my voice as I'm talking before and after the practice, you know. So this, it really does move energy up into the body and get that sort of fire. I'm feeling a lot more focused, you know. So that is the Bhramari Pranayama, the Bellows Breath, right? And again, that is you know, if you're not used to using your muscles in this way, then it is going to be a challenging practice. You know, it does take a little bit of getting used to using your muscles in this way. But again, regular practice will lead to you getting the hang of it pretty quickly, really. So we come to our third and final breath work. Okay, so now this is the most intense breath work we're going to be doing today. And now it's actually taking the breath work that we've been doing another step further, you know. So this one is called Tummo Pranayama. This is the most powerful breath work that I know of, actually. And so as a result, there are definitely, you know, things that you should not practice this if you have these things. So avoid doing this Tummo breath work. Avoid it if there's any cardiovascular issues such as hypertension, heart disease, arrhythmias, neurological issues such as epilepsy, history of fainting, psychological things such as anxiety disorders, panic disorders, bipolar disorder, or psychosis. If you have severe lung disease, obviously if you're pregnant, don't do this. And yeah, so that's the main things to be considerate of, right? But actually, I once had a woman that I was working with who, she was working in London. She was actually working in the Houses of Parliament, and whilst in the Houses of Parliament she had an asthma attack. So she had quite bad asthma. She suffered from a very bad asthma attack, and it was one of those things that, you know, by the time the emergency services were able to get to her, they basically said, you know, if they had been another minute or two later, it would have been very, very bad. You know, it would have been a very different story had they not reached her in the time that they had. And so after this incident, you know, we were working together, and she wanted to recover. She wanted to, you know, do something that would help her in recovering from this severe asthma attack that she had. And so we did this breath work, and when she went for her follow-up checkup appointment, the results were fantastic. The doctors were very impressed, very happy, and she was obviously doing a multitude of things to take care of herself, but this breath work would have been the one that really helped to sort of bring her system back under control and bring the energy that she needed into her body, bring the oxygen she needed into her body. So Tummo Pranayama. This is more commonly known by practitioners of Wim Hof. Some people know him as the Iceman. He's used this breath work to, for an extended period of time, expose himself to severe cold. So I think the actual experiment, for example, one of the many that he's done, was he was submerged in a tank of water, ice water, and using this breath work, he was able to keep his core temperature at the temperature that it should be. So they had scientists and everybody was tracking him and studying him and obviously making sure that nothing was going to go wrong. But for the whole 30 minutes, whilst being submerged in ice cold water, his body temperature didn't drop because he was using this breath work to keep himself at a good temperature. So the Tummo Pranayama. The way that we do this is you breathe in as deep as you can and then exhale quickly out through the mouth. Okay, so it's we do that. One round is 90 seconds. Okay, so for 90 seconds, and if you've not done this before, it can bring you some strange feelings, some strange sensations. I've had people reporting that they felt tingling in the fingers, they felt tension in their body. Sometimes it can make your hands sort of cramp like this as well. It can do a lot of strange things. Some people have also said that they've had a bit of visual hallucination and auditory hallucinations. So, it is a powerful breath work. If whatever you're experiencing during the 90 seconds when we're doing the breath work, if it is too much, stop. Let bring your breathing back under control, let it settle for a moment and just observe yourself and calm yourself down. Whatever it is, obviously don't push this. If it's new to you, tread lightly, don't try and get it in one practice. It's going to be something to revisit. It can be a daily thing, or every other day, just regularly trying this practice to see if you can improve your ability to breathe, essentially. So I think the most common thing people struggle with Tummo Pranayama is the discomfort in the nose, right? Because you're breathing into a capacity that you might never have done before. And especially if the air is cold, you're going to really feel that in your nose, right? So it can feel a bit uncomfortable in the nose, but again, if it's tolerable, if you're happy to continue, then continue. If it feels like too much, don't push it, all right? But we're going to do this breath work for 90 seconds. And then when you do this practice by yourself, you'll go, after the 90 seconds, you exhale and you hold the exhale. So your lungs are empty, there's no breath in your body. You're holding the exhale for as long as you can and time yourself, right? And what you want to see is how long you're able to hold your breath for, hold your lungs empty for. And this will be indicative of how energy efficient your body is, the health of your internal organs. There's a whole other thing that I could already spend another half an hour talking about, but we'll do the practice for now. And if you're interested in finding out what benefits this does for the body, I'd recommend looking into the Wim Hof, as he is the sort of the figurehead right now of this practice. Okay, so Sitting comfortably, long through the spine, shoulder blades backwards, closing your eyes. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Keep it going, nice and strong. In through the nose, out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. As you do this practice, you're going to feel heat in the body, you're going to feel warmth in the body, you're going to feel a lot more energy, a lot more power going through your body. And if you're not used to this, it might feel a bit strange, a bit uncomfortable. But again, try and maintain the intensity, keep going. If it's too much, drop it, have a breather. But otherwise, if you can, rejoining us as we continue with the breath work. Over halfway there, keep it going. Ten more seconds, keep it going nice and strong. And then deep breath in. Exhale. Lungs empty, focus inside, soften your body, relax. When you must, settling back into your regular breath. So that is Tummo Pranayama. Very strong practice. You know, if you're feeling low on energy, this will restore your energy. What you're doing is you're over saturating your body with oxygen. And so once you've done this breath work, depending on, again, how efficient your body is, how healthy your body is, you can sit there for a long period of time without the need to breathe, and you're going to be in this sort of very interesting state of consciousness where, you know, you're so engrossed in holding your breath that when you come out and you see how long you've held your breath for, you might be quite surprised. You know, because you go into this sort of space inside of yourself where sort of you don't think about time. Time doesn't exist, and you have this kind of expansiveness feeling. And so that when you do eventually come out of it and you see the time, you're like, wow, that's unexpected. So powerful breath work. Again, all three breath works, you know, please consider the contraindications that I've mentioned before we did the breath works. And otherwise, when you give these a go, whether it's in the live now or later on, leave a comment, tag me if you can, and I will come back, read the comments, answer any questions, and it's just very nice to see how everybody gets on with it. But that is all we have time for today. So thank you all very much, and I will see you next month.